Hello and welcome everyone to this episode of The Spotlight. And in the Spotlight with me right now is Miss Leta Calvert. She is the producer of 2 shows. We're going to talk to her a little bit about that, so help me welcome her right now. Miss Leta, thank you so much for being here. So good to have you. And I want to clarify what we're talking about when it comes to the 2 shows that you're producing. Okay. One is a special, correct?
Yes.
And the other one will be a regular show in the next quarter.
That's correct.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So the show's called Who's Schooling Who for the special, right?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit, first of all, about that, and then we'll find out some more about you.
Okay. Well, the reason why I came up with Who's Schooling Who is because the last, I want to say 15 years, I've been working and serving in public schools in Denver, Atlanta, and now in Charlotte.
Okay.
And witnessed a lot go on when it came to the students' education, what teachers were going through, and what parents were unaware of.
Amazing. So that brings me to talking about like where you're from, because you started talking about how you were in the school system in Denver. So is that where you're from?
I'm from Denver, Colorado, but I ended up moving to Atlanta.
Okay.
And resided in Atlanta for 9 years, and my son ended up growing up in school in Atlanta.
Okay.
So that's when I really got involved. We moved to Atlanta. It was a bit of a culture shock.
Okay.
We moved to Lithonia, Georgia, and it was predominantly black.
Okay.
And so I grew up amongst diversity. So it was really a culture shock.
Okay.
And so as I enrolled my son in school, he ended up in 5 middle schools.
Wow.
In 2 years. I became a bus driver so that I could be involved in his schooling. And so once I became a bus driver and started volunteering to go into the school, that's when I began to see the travesty going on with what the teachers were dealing with and the students due to No Child Left Behind.
Okay.
With No Child Left Behind, President Bush put that into play. And so it was intended not to leave students behind, and they wanted them to test high in all their subjects. And it became a one-size-fits-all almost when it came to them testing. And so as far as I'm concerned, you can teach a child how to remember data. And that's what it boiled down to. And then when money was attached, they called it AYP, Adequate Yearly Progress, but it became Adequate Yearly Paycheck.
Wow.
Because the teachers were paid according to how well the students tested. And so it became fearful for the students when it came to testing. They were afraid of failing the test. If they failed the test, then it fell on the teachers, and then they were sometimes penalized if a number of students didn't pass the test. So it became all about money. But in the process, the students began to be failed forward, and the teachers as well.
Wow.
So instead of being left behind, they were failed forward.
Wow, that's amazing. It's interesting how maybe that was not something that was foreseen, that could happen, that in the whole mix of things and in the moment that people would just manufacture grades and points in order to get it past the line.
Yes.
So tell us what you did. What did you do about that?
Well, I began to go through various trainings to teach me how to advocate for my son. And so I began volunteering in the schools. I became a bus driver so that I would have the free time to go into the school to volunteer to help, not just my son, but the teachers as well. And unbeknownst to me, when I began volunteering going into the schools, my son became a target and I became a target. And I was trying to get the teachers to recognize I'm here to help. But because of some underhanded things that were being done with the testing and with the students, I became a threat.
I see, because you were going to tell the truth.
Yes.
Okay, amazing. And is that one of the reasons why your son was in 5 different middle schools at that time?
Yes.
Okay.
One of the 5 middle schools was a private school.
Okay.
Rosa Parks private school.
Okay.
And it was a phenomenal school. But at the end of the day, that principal began using the money inappropriately for the school. They had teachers that were dedicated to the students, and they began quitting one by one. And then that school closed down. So I ended up moving to another county, Gwinnett County, where it was more diverse.
Okay. Amazing. And so what else did you do? Because I know that you wrote down some things.
Yes.
And you actually did more than just look like you were a threat. You became a threat. How did you do that?
Yes. Well, one of the things I did, I wrote a memo called No Child Left Behind. And I appealed to educators, pastors, parents to step up to the plate. And mainly parents, because as I continued to volunteer my time, I noticed parents weren't showing up. And so it became so heartbreaking.
Yeah.
I was a bus driver.
Right.
And so what I would do is when the students would get their progress reports, I would ask them to see their grades. And so if their grades were well, I would give them treats.
Nice.
So I had one student tell me that had an A in math. She said, Miss L, she said, I got an A in math and don't have a clue what I'm doing.
Wow. She told you that.
She told me that. And once that was revealed to me, I went straight to the principal. I addressed it, not trying to get the teacher in trouble because their hands were tied as well. And so after I wrote the memo, I passed it out to pastors, educators, parents, trying to get them involved. So in the meantime, I ended up moving to Gwinnett County. I said, well, maybe if I move to another county where there's more diversity, my son will have a better chance.
Okay.
So that's when I elected to move to Gwinnett County, which was predominantly white. And I got involved again. I went into the schools, sat in my son's classes. Well, the first day I sat in class, I'm thinking I'm going to see diversity. And it was all Hispanic and black students. So I looked around like, where are the Caucasian students? And as I continued to volunteer, I noticed that the classes were separated.
Oh, wow.
And once again, our kids were being labeled, being put into classes, honor classes, AP classes, college prep, but couldn't even read or write.
Okay. So the kids, they have the capability of doing these things. They
Most
can
definitely.
read, they can write, they can do arithmetic, math, and they can do all of the different things that they're needing to do in
Yes.
order to function in life.
Yes.
However, they were partitioned according to just where they were placed in
Yes.
order to keep that domino effect going, keep the money coming in.
Yes.
Okay. So what did you do after that?
Well, once again, I went through, it was called Parent Leadership Academy, and it teaches you how to advocate for your children.
Okay.
And so after I completed the training, they began allowing me to go into the various schools to address parents. Also with my son, when he was 14, he ended up almost losing his life in a car accident.
Wow.
Because he took my daughter's car, and the police were called, and by the grace of God, they didn't shoot in the car. But my son had an accident, and he had 3 of his peers with him. And I got a call at 4 a.m. saying, your son is in the hospital.
Oh, my.
And when I got there, he came out handcuffed. And they were telling me, you must be a praying mother, because he could have easily have been killed. And then the student, one of his peers that was in the car with him, they said that if he dies, then my son would be charged with vehicular homicide.
My goodness.
So to fast forward, because he was in, he ended up going to juvenile detention for 40 days because of that. And he ended up in an alternative school.
Okay.
And once he was put in the alternative school, I became involved with the alternative school
Okay.
and began advocating even in the alternative school and volunteered there for 4 years after my son had left.
So can I ask you about why you think that he may have gotten into this trouble? Do you think that he wasn't getting what he needed in school, so he acted out with taking the car, and then this, of course, led to yet another school? Fill us in about that.
Well, it was a couple of issues.
Okay.
Number one, because of how he was being taught, they were slamming the kids with just a bunch of work
Okay.
constantly,
Okay.
trying to get them to just pass tests. Also, too, my son has ADHD. So I kept hearing, they're putting our black boys on medication. Don't put them on medication. And I listened to that. But my son clearly had ADHD.
Okay.
And before I got help, I was trying to beat him into submission.
Okay.
And,
Right.
thinking he was just rebelling.
Right.
But he actually had ADHD.
Okay.
And so we went for counseling and I got him the help.
Okay.
And then I became involved in the alternative school and became, was put on the board of counselors.
Okay.
And just stayed very involved. And I also worked at the Boys and Girls Club as well.
Okay.
While I volunteered at the alternative school.
It sounds like you're talking about some things that a lot of our kids are going through.
Yes.
Whether it's ADHD, not being served like they should, not learning like they should. And so now here you are in Charlotte.
Yes.
And you are doing this program. And so would you say that all of that is really key and instrumental in what you want to talk about during this show?
Very much so.
Okay.
Very much so.
Okay.
If I may add, once I moved from Atlanta back to Denver,
Okay.
okay, before I moved to Charlotte.
Okay.
So when I moved back to Denver, I got involved with my grandchildren.
Okay.
My granddaughter was on the kill list
Oh, wow.
in Denver.
Yeah.
And the young lady and the kids that had her and other kids on the kill list, they were allowed to stay in the class. Nothing was done to them. And so, once again, I got involved in Denver and went into the school and did a bullying workshop and recognized how so many kids are suffering in silence, as well as teachers. And once I did the bullying workshop there, I did all 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. And
Wow.
what I found out is that many kids are experiencing trauma at home. Then they're coming to school being bullied and have no voice. So
Right.
they're crying silently.
Right, right. Amazing. And let me back it up a little bit, because when you say your granddaughter was on the kill list, that has been something that a lot of youth have been doing. Whoever put her on a kill list was going through something themselves.
Yes.
And as we know, there have been several shootings in schools across our country.
Yes.
And a lot of it is because these youth are suffering in silence, so many things that are coming at them. But she was on a kill list because of something that a student planned to do.
Yes.
And you tell me that nothing was done about that.
Eventually, they were removed from the school.
Okay.
But that's only because my daughter called the television station and it was exposed. But had that not happened, they were allowed to stay in the classroom with my granddaughter. And another student went to an administrator to even tell them about the kill list. And nothing was said or done.
Nothing was done. My goodness. And so, Ms. Leta, now that you are here in Charlotte,
Yes.
from Denver and having been in Atlanta and experienced those things there, what are you seeing here in the school system here?
Honestly, it's gotten worse.
My goodness.
Now when you go into the schools here, and let me say, I'm not here to badmouth the teachers, the educators, the students, or the parents, because it takes a team in order for the students to be successful.
Right.
But once I got here and became involved in the schools here, it was the same thing, but only heightened.
My goodness.
Kids bullying kids, kids bullying the teachers, teachers crying out for help. having to make sure that the scores are up to par, else they're reprimanded.
Okay, so I don't have kids, and so, but I work with kids. Everyone else's kids, and I have to keep up with what is happening with the No Left Behind, because I know a lot of things have changed.
Yes.
There are the EOSs, the end of grade, or EOGs, the end of grade tests, and the different exams that they need to go through.
Yes.
But when you say it's heightened and gotten worse, how does it balance out with how they're learning and with how they are dealing with a lot of the issues that are coming at them?
Okay. Now it's called Every Child Succeeds. It's no longer No Child Left Behind. And their intentions are good, but especially the inner city schools, when you go into these schools where they don't have the finances to have the better books, the better technology for our kids, our teachers are fighting a losing battle.
Okay.
Nowadays you have kids raising kids.
Yeah.
Our parents are too busy to take the time out to spend with their kids to really know what's going on in the school.
Right.
I would often ask parents, do you know what it's like? Do you really know what it's like in your child's world?
Right, right.
One of the reasons I came up with old school, new school, or who's schooling who, is because growing up I was told, I did grow up old school. We respected our elders, yes ma'am, no ma'am. But as my children grew up and I began to throw the old school with them, they snapped back real quick. Mom, it's not like that. We're not growing up in your era now. It's different for us. And they were right. And so I recognize, okay, I'm still old school. But now it takes new school tactics. Because we're different. We're dealing with a whole different set of kids.
Yeah. I like what you said about new school tactics, not get rid of the old principles, because the old principles, being respectful to your elders, that should not go out of the window.
Yes.
That should be something that is honored on throughout, but new school tactics of how to teach that.
Yes.
I can see where you're coming from. And so now, we mentioned at the top of the hour that you have two shows. The other one will be Come Let Us Reason Together. And it sounds like, a lot of what you're talking about in Who's Schooling Who is an appeal to parents to come let us reason together.
Yes.
But I want to stay on the topic of the Who's Schooling Who, because this is so necessary when we talk about who is going to see your program. And I noticed in your program you had two young men who are stellar. They gave such good information personally and just observationally of what they've dealt with. And so tell us a little bit about that, your guests on Who's Schooling Who, this special.
Okay, well, my two guests, one was Tyrese Fant. He's actually a young man that I worked with in one of the schools here.
In Charlotte, okay.
Yes, and the other young gentleman happens to be my son.
Your son.
Matisse Man. And very proud of him.
That's awesome. Well, you should be. You should be. They were both giving such excellent information and just really talking about, like I said, the personal experiences, what they observe, some of the solutions, because it's easy to see a lot of shows that talk about problems.
Yes.
But they were talking about solutions. You were talking about solutions.
Yes.
And you pull in the parents and pull in those who you want to reach.
Yes.
So talk to me a little bit more about that. Well, how did you decide to put them on and just kind of put the show together the way you have?
Okay. One of the reasons I chose those two gentlemen, Tyrese, he's a therapist.
Okay.
His background is from therapy. And with my son, he was raised, I was a single parent with him and my two daughters.
Okay.
And so you either sacrifice now or you sacrifice later. And so with my son, I knew I had to make a decision in order for me to be able to be involved while he matriculated through his grades. I was willing to make that sacrifice. And so I took a job working part-time, driving school buses, and it allowed me the free time to, go into the school and volunteer.
Right.
And so with my son, he ended up in 5 schools, middle schools. He graduated from high school with a 2.1.
Wow.
Football was the carrot
Yeah.
that even caused him to get to graduate. Now 2.1, yes, that's low, but that wasn't the end of his story.
Right.
And
Right.
so once he graduated, he worked for a year. And so I wanted him, if he was going to go to college, I kept telling him, son, go, if you're going to go to college, go for business.
Yeah.
Take business.
Yeah.
Because that's where I feel like people of color are lacking. But he decided to take, criminology.
Okay.
So he ended up going to Miles College. He graduated with honors,
Excellent.
and he became the SGA president.
Wow.
Okay. So he went
Student
from
Government Association,
yes.
for those who might not know.
So from high school 2.1, he became the SGA president.
Awesome. That is awesome.
Yes.
He just needed to see what he was good at and what he
Yes.
felt passionate about. Is that correct?
Yes. That, and then two, it took me being willing to make that sacrifice. Because had I not, the one thing that I recognized about being involved in the schools, if we as parents don't care for our kids more than they do, then they're not going to care.
Right.
But because I stayed involved, I didn't wait for the teachers to call me.
Right.
I emailed them.
Right.
If you have any issues with my son, don't hesitate to call me.
Right.
And at the time, I had a job with no benefits, but if I had to take off of work, I was Johnny on the spot.
That's excellent.
And because I stayed involved, he had teachers that surrounded him
Yeah.
of all ethnicities to make sure he succeeded.
Yeah. This is really powerful to hear because it's basically about parents advocating for their youth, for their children.
Yes.
And you've said that. And you also say you don't see that.
No.
And so this show that you're doing, Who's Schooling Who, this show is really, really directed towards the parents quite a bit.
Yes.
So what would you say to these parents, or what have you observed about the parents? Let's start with that. What have you observed other than, of course, they're not involved. You're telling me they're not involved the way that they should be. Are there some things that you have observed that you can share that you see contribute to that?
Yes. I think some of the reasons why parents are not involved, most of our kids are being raised in single parent households, so they don't have that support system. And so sometimes the mothers may be too tired to be involved. Also, what I recognized that was very disheartening, now if our kid was number one on the football team, basketball team, then parents will make time for that.
Right.
But when it came to their academics, they weren't showing up. And that's what has to change.
Do you think that some of the parents also themselves, maybe they grew up in a way that they were not supported? They didn't have the kind of support or dug into their education like they should, that may be contributing to some of this?
That could be. But when I look at my mother, my mother ended up raising 7 kids by herself once my father divorced her. And we can't continue to make excuses.
Excuses.
We cannot make excuses. You make time for what's important to you. Now, when I served in the schools here, there were students coming in with $300 Yeezys on, Gucci bags, nails done to the hip. But when I asked you to take out a piece of paper and write, you can't spell.
Very good point.
And I was a substitute teacher one of these years. And so something's wrong with that picture.
Yeah.
And then you have, instead of ask Johnny or ask Sharon, we asking Google. So Google's doing the thinking for our kids, and their minds are being put to sleep.
Very good. That's a very good point. And you're talking about things that you have observed from like 2006, if I remember correctly. that was the time period when the scandal was happening in Atlanta.
Yes.
With the teachers passing the youth forward.
Yes.
And it was a big deal. They got very much in trouble and should have. And then with that being exposed, everybody's looking at, okay, what do we need to do? And so coming from 2006 all the way up to now, and you're seeing that it's gotten worse.
Yes.
I want to understand, what do you feel like those of us who may not be in the school system or parents can do? What are some things you feel like that people who are looking at this, who are looking at this show, who are going to look at your show, and they feel compelled to do something? What would you say?
What I would say is to please, even just an hour of your time, whether it's on the weekend or if it's during the week and you have the time off, come volunteer in the schools, especially black males. You're needed. The majority of the time, our students have female teachers. Very rarely do they see male teachers. It's predominantly female. We need more males to step up in the school and even at home.
Yeah, sounds good. And just so everyone knows, it's important for those young men to still be respectful.
Yes.
And to understand they can learn from these female teachers, but that void is there.
Yes.
And so for the male teachers, so we got that out there. That's excellent. So let's talk a little bit, before we have to wrap things up here, a little bit about the show that you're going to be doing on a regular basis called Come Let Us Reason Together.
Yes.
So tell us more about that.
Well, let us reason together. I want to be able to have a conversation with those that may think differently than I do, may have opposing views. I'm a believer that every human being on this earth is divinely designed and has purpose. Depending on culture, we're all raised differently. And so if we can come together and hear one another out, we can respectfully agree to disagree, but hear each other's perspective and come up with solutions to heal our communities.
Sounds good.
I'm tired of seeing our kids' lives snuffed out.
Yeah.
Now at 14 and 15.
Yeah.
I'm tired.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping to bring light and be a light.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you for what you're doing. And, there's many of us who feel very much compelled. We've talked about working with the youth, and there's so many others who are compelled, and sometimes they feel like their hands are tied, or if they don't know exactly what to do or where to go, then, your show is going to help with that, giving resources. So thank you. Thank you for what you're doing, and thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's my
All
pleasure.
right. All right. Well, we want to thank you also for watching, and stay tuned right here on this channel to see Leta's shows, Who's Schooling Who, the special, as well as her regular show that's going to be called Come Let Us Reason Together, and different subtitles and different series topics. So be aware and be in touch with her. She'll let you know where you can find her. And join us the next time right here on The Spotlight. We'll see you then.